Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Freezerburns. As always, I'm your host Greg, the frozen food master, and you're joining me as I eat my way through the freezer aisle one box at a time. Today is day two of Pie Week, and we're gonna celebrate with two pies. It's another Frodown, guys. It's a cherry pie Frodown. Sara Lee cherry pie, $6.39 a box, versus Mrs. Smith's cherry pie, $6.49 a box. I'm ready to get both of these out of the box. We're gonna see how it looks. We're gonna cook them in the oven, and I'm gonna get bites and wedges and slices of both of these pies into my belly. Freezerburns starts right now. Here we go. Too cold.
You spend some time on Freezerburns, then you might stave off the stomach churns. Greg's the frozen food master, he's best bud to your taste buds.
Once again, today we are doing a cherry pie Frodown. We got the Sara Lee, $6.39 versus Mrs. Smith's, $6.49. 10-cent difference here on the Mrs. Smith's. First thing you will notice is 10-cent difference. But the Sara Lee is actually more pie, and it's cheaper. This cherry pie oven fresh by Sara Lee is 2 pounds and 5 ounces. This Mrs. Smith's classic cherry pie is 1 pound and 11 ounces, considerably bigger and 10 cents cheaper. But how will it taste? Will it be worth it? I don't know. Man, I can barely fit both boxes in the frame here. Let's first talk about Sara Lee, okay? 2006 Best Taste Award. That's interesting. 2006, that's a long time ago. I wonder how long, whether they just haven't won an award since, or whether, how long does that really apply? 2006 by American Culinary Chef's Best. That's chefbest.org, okay? 2006 Best Taste Award, cherry pie oven fresh. Let's take a look at this. Full cherries there, big cherries. Nice flaky crust, but other than that, really nothing to report here on the box. Once again, $6.39. This covers 37 ounces, that's 2 pounds, 5 ounces, 1.04 kilograms. Now, why is it pronounced kilometer, not kilometer? But it's called kilograms, not kilogram. I don't know. Something to think about. Sara Lee versus Mrs. Smith's. I'm sure they were both hip ladies. Which one can bake a better pie? That's what I want to know. Those are the one who bakes the better pie is the one that's top notch in my book. Now, Sara Lee, incidentally, in case you guys don't know this, I always thought that the tagline of Sara Lee was "Nobody does it like Sara Lee," but it's really a double negative. It's nobody doesn't like Sara Lee. There isn't someone that doesn't like Sara Lee. Everyone likes it. Just a little bit of trivia there. Okay, nutritional facts. Nothing major to report. Once again, I'm going to put that down in the comment section. There are 8 servings per container here, and there's 16 grams of fat. Now, Mrs. Smith's, 10 cents more, $6.49. Classic cherry pie, a lot more flake to the crust, at least in the packaging here. 27 ounces, 1 pound, 11 ounces. Now they've called out here 0 grams trans fat, and then in nutritional facts there are 16 grams total fat. Is that how much, what I said? Low attention span, yeah. Equal 16 grams total fat, and there's only 6 servings here. So that's, wow. This is a bigger pie, that's why there's 8 servings. So same fat per serving, okay? Now, serving size here is 127 grams, serving size here is 131 grams. So this is a slightly less fattening opportunity here, Sara Lee, and it's cheaper. How can we cook these babies? God, I said it again. I'm not really. I have nothing against babies. I don't want to cook them. I don't know. It's built into my vernacular. Okay, Mrs. Smith's baking instruction. I'm going to place oven rack in center position, preheat oven to 375. That's what I got going on here. Open center hole of pie and cut 4 to 6 slits in top crust. So I'm basically holing this pie. And then I'm going to bake it for 55 to 65 minutes until golden brown. and then serve warm in 30 minutes or cooled after 2 hours. So wow, that's like 65 minutes at 375. Sara Lee is bake at 400, and I'm gonna cut the slits as well, and then I'm gonna bake this for 65 minutes. Man, it's gonna be a late night, guys, because I can't bake them at the same time. It's gonna be a late night, and then I gotta let it cool for 45 minutes. Man. Okay, let's open up the Sara Lee one first. I'm gonna see what we got. Okay, look at this. There's the pie. Nothing new to report except this is like a perfectly pressed pie on top. Doesn't have any crumb topping like a Dutch apple, which we're going to be reviewing later on this week. And certainly it's got that little hole right smack in the middle. This is the Sara Lee pie. Now let's contrast that, or contrast, with the Mrs. Smith's pie. Oh, the Mrs. Smith's also has a hole and it's got some leakage there. And this one definitely has a more pronounced ridge on the outside crust, but other than that, nice and smooth up top. Let's see, just so you can see the difference. Same depth, but this one's a little bigger. So, when I come back, which, man, my hair will be grown out, I'll have like a beard by the time I come back. It'll be like 3 hours later, maybe, yeah, at least 3 hours later. I will have baked both of these pies. I will explain to you how they look, how they smell, and I'm going to get these into my belly when we come back. Welcome back, and it has been a long time since my last segment. It is now 3 hours later, and I have 2 slices of cherry pie, okay? Here on my right, your left, is the Mrs. Smith's cherry pie. Once again, it's $6.49 for a pie. Here on my left, your right, is a Sara Lee pie, 10 cents less, $6.39. Let's first talk about smell. The Sara Lee pie has a way more sweet, distinctive cherry smell than the Mrs. Smith's. That's one thing I noticed right off the bat. This Mrs. Smith's one, it smells like cherry, but it smells more like the buttery crust. But the Sara Lee, you know that smell, that cherry pie type smell? The Sara Lee is a distinctive cherry pie type smell. So that's the difference in smells. In terms of the outside of the crust, the Mrs. Smith's crust is actually really flaky. It's flaky, but it's like flaky like a spring roll is flaky, where it's not as crusty. Maybe it's just the top is just a thin layer. Spring roll is the best way to describe it. I'm going to show you that a little close up. The Sara Lee one has a little more biscuit-like quality on the top of the crust. Both of them, when you take out a slice, they're just not as thick as you would see in the box. I mean, on the box it is like congealed, and let's face it, the stuff in the middle doesn't cut like a cake. It's a pie. It's got filling in the middle, and then the crust on the top goes down a little when you cut it. So these are a lot flatter than it looks like on the box, okay? Both of them I can see right away have full pieces of cherry. Both of them have been baked to a golden brown. This one was in the oven at 400 degrees for about 10 minutes longer. This one was in the oven for 375. Both roughly around an hour, both roughly 30 to 45 minutes of cooling. Okay, let's get to the good stuff. First, I'm going to take the Mrs. Smith's, I'm going to taste it, Mrs. Smith's. Here it is close up. I'm going to take both a bite on the front, try to get the top and the bottom crust. Look at that cherry filling. It's really sticky and gelatinous, and that's good. Now, as you recall, doesn't have as much of a distinct cherry flavor as smell as the Sara Lee. Let's see how this tastes. Oh, it may not have the smell. It definitely has the taste. That's a good. It's a good bite of pie. Good flaky crust. The bottom is substantial, cooked all the way through, but not too thick and not too skinny. or too thin, mind you. I'm going to try the back side of the crust, which is also equally important. Yeah. Even though it's a harder and a little more burnt on the outside, it's just so rich. It's good. Tastes really buttery, nice pastry type taste. Overall, I would say that this is a good tasting pie. I'd give this, the Mrs. Smith's, $6.49 a box. I give this a 4-star. I think this is a really, really good pie. Now, take a quick thing of water. So I want to make sure that when I'm tasting the Sara Lee pie, I can have a fairly clean, cleansed palate. Like I said, you know, super, super cherry smell. I'm going to try a bite out from the front. The crust doesn't have as much of a buttery taste to it. It's a little chalkier, the crust. It's a decent taste. Let me try the back side. A lot drier. Definitely a lot drier. This is a Sara Lee oven fresh cherry pie, $6.39. I give this a 3-star. So there you go, guys. This is the Mrs. Smith's versus the Sara Lee cherry pie. The Sara Lee was 10 cents cheaper and it gave you more pie. But I'll tell you, the Mrs. Smith's pie is about a full point better, a full star better in terms of quality. Even though it was smaller, even though it cost a little more, the crust was a lot flakier. The crust was butterier. Is that the right word? Just tastes really, really good all the way through from the front to the back. It wasn't overly dry like this one was. The cherry taste in the middle, the filling, was about equal, both sides. Both of them had decent sized pieces of cherry, whole cherries. Both tasted like what you would imagine cherry pie, that distinctive cherry, syrupy, super sweet filling in a pie. But what it comes down to, guys, is the crust, and Mrs. Smith's beats Sara Lee. This has been the Frodown for cherry pie. This is Pie Week, second day of Pie Week, and wow, this was a good one. It took me a long time to bake these, so I'm kind of exhausted by the end of this. But wow, this was a good head-to-head competition. I give Mrs. Smith's the edge with a 4-star rating. As always, I'm your host Greg, the Frozen Food Master. Question of the day: do you like cherry pie, and what's the best cherry pie you've ever had in your life? Once again, this has been a review of Freezerburns. Come back tomorrow for another pie throwdown here on Pie Week on Freezerburns, and I'll see you next time.